Okay, so you may notice that the quality of my videos may have improved because my wonderful son Will bought me a whole lighting and tripod setup, so hopefully it won't be as shaky and it'll be a little bit easier to follow. This is my mother's meatball recipe, and I want to clarify that all of these recipes that I got from my mother from watching her do these things when she cooked them, there was never any measurements, so I'm having a little trouble trying to come up with measurements that are appropriate. So everything is going to be, kind of very flexible. But what's not flexible is you want to start with what most people call the meatloaf blend, called the meatball blend up in New York. This is what we'd always use for meatball. You see there's 3 labels here from the Oguchi meat market. This is the only place in all of Savannah area, maybe all of Georgia, that I found where you can get veal. But I want you to look real close here at the price of the veal. Let me see if I can get that in focus. Oh, if you can't see it, it says $26.99 a pound. So this is cut into thirds. I got 2 pounds of meat, and I asked them to do it as evenly as they can into thirds. Normally you would get a pound of each, but I'm cutting the recipe down a little bit since the veal is $26.99 a pound. No, because I don't really need that much. But you see, you make it up. The pork is only $2.89 a pound. The beef, you're going to get $85.15 blend. You don't need anything purer than that. You need the fat. And so it averaged out pretty good. So this is 2 pounds. So this recipe is going to be for 2 pounds, but I don't know that you would change the recipe much for 3 pounds. You might want to just put another half a cup of breadcrumbs. You see, I already use a full cup of breadcrumbs just for this, and you may like more, especially when you learn the breadcrumb tricks that I'm going to teach you. So this is all going to go into this bowl. I'm going to break 2 eggs in there. And you want the eggs room temperature, and if you got them out of the fridge, just put them in warm water for a few minutes. It does the same thing. Then we have the cup of flavored breadcrumbs. So when I say flavored breadcrumbs, you could use 4C or the Progresso is probably better. If you notice the ingredients, you want to make sure that it has Italian seasoning in it, not just parsley. So if not, you're going to put in a teaspoon of just regular, Italian seasoning that has oregano and thyme and all those other stuff. All right, in the breadcrumbs, again, 1 cup, full cup. You're going to do a cup of grated, whatever your favorite cheese is. Now remember, there's already cheese in the breadcrumbs, so this is only a quarter of a cup of cheese we're going to use. Some people might like more cheese. And then one thing that I honestly don't remember if my mother did put in milk, but I've shared so many recipes and everybody that I've spoken with does put milk. I use half and half and just a half a cup for this much. Like I said, you wouldn't change it much if you were going to do 3 pounds. Again, you're looking for consistency and texture when you're doing it, so it comes over experience. But these should be good things to start with for this recipe. Okay, so what I do with the egg is I beat it separately. Some people like to beat it inside the meat and squish it together. It doesn't matter. I like to beat it with a little milk first to get it kind of well blended. So I'm gonna put this with the milk, the cheese, and the egg. It's all that's gonna go in the meat. We're saving the breadcrumbs for later. And you're gonna do this with your hands, so you definitely want to make sure your hands are clean. I just can't use gloves, but if you want to put on those blue gloves that the surgeon used, that's fine too. Okay, so you see I made like a little kind of cup in the meat, and I put in just the egg mixture and the milk, and I'm going to mix this thoroughly. Then I'm going to add the cheese and the breadcrumbs a little later. You're going to get in there and mix it. It's going to feel a little watery. Remember, you're putting a cup of breadcrumbs in there. It's going to soak all that up too. Right now we just got the meat, the eggs, and the milk. And this is another reason why you want to get the meat and everything to room temperature, because my hand's freezing right now, so I forgot to do that. It's not going to make that much of a difference in the taste or the texture, but it's perfectly okay, as any chef will tell you, is to get meat to a warmer temperature so you can work with it easier. But this looks like a good consistency. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the cheese and mix that in. Again, this is all to taste. You can put more cheese in there if you want. You can put more breadcrumbs. I like a lot of breadcrumbs because I like a dense meatball. I don't like a soft meatball like you would get in a meatball hero. I like one that kind of could stand alone and you could even eat it as a meatball the way you would without the sauce. But this is going to cook a good third of the way in the tomato sauce, you'll see. So believe it or not, I'm making the meatballs first. I haven't even started the sauce. So there's going to be a long gap between when these meatballs get ready to be made and we drop them in the sauce. And for this sauce, of course, you're going to follow the Nani sauce recipe on the channel. All right, so the breadcrumbs. What we're going to do with the breadcrumbs, let me just show you a little bit of it. But question, what tastes better, bread or toast? Yes, the answer is toast. Toast tastes better. So one of my mother's tricks was that she toasted the breadcrumbs before she mixed them in here. So we're going to go ahead and toast those on the stove with some olive oil. I'll give you a quick peek of that technique. You got to be very careful when you're cooking them. You don't want to burn them, you just want to brown them. So you're going to have to control the temperature consistently to make sure you're not burning it. Sometimes you can only tell by standing over the pan and smelling to make sure it's just at the right, just like when you'd smell toast, you know it's done. Okay, so I diced up some garlic and we got our pan ready on the stove. Now remember my technique, cold olive oil. We're going to put the garlic in here. We're going to simmer the garlic until it gets a little soft. We are then going to throw in the breadcrumbs. And it's almost like we're frying the breadcrumbs. You're going to keep adding olive oil. You want it to have a nice, rich, golden consistency, but it's almost not going to be moist, but it's going to be definitely have olive oil throughout the breadcrumbs. So if you can imagine, if you were just going to eat breadcrumbs, they would taste much better if you took a spoonful like this, or if you took a spoonful after heating them up and browning them in garlic. I mean in garlic and olive oil. Obviously, that's going to be the little trick that adds flavor to the meatballs that made my mom special. Okay, so the garlic has been sitting just in the cold olive oil for a few minutes. I'm now turning it on to medium heat. And you already know this already, because if you made the tomato sauce already, that you're going to need, remember, you can make that sauce ahead of time, but if you're going to use it for meatballs, you want to make the sauce ahead of time and you're going to simmer it for at least an hour with the meatballs in them. So, of course, it's much better if you cook the meatballs, have them ready to throw in the sauce when you reach the simmering stage on the tomato sauce. I'll show you all that after I make the tomato sauce. But what I want to remind you, when you're cooking garlic and olive oil and you want to get it just till it's tender, and this is about 3 cloves. Probably should have only put 2. I may cut some of this out before I actually mix in the breadcrumbs, because you definitely want maybe a clove for each pound of meat. So that would really only be 2. And I did 3, so I may have a third more, but you know I like garlic, so maybe I'll just leave it. Okay, that's what we're listening for. You hear that? That's when you have to turn it down. Don't let it simmer more than that. And what we're going to do is, once we've simmered these, remember, you don't brown them. You're just cooking them till they get soft, which is probably going to be about 2 minutes, adjusting the heat to make sure they don't burn. Then we're going to throw in the breadcrumbs and toast the breadcrumbs. I'll show you a little of that too. So I'm convinced that there's nothing that smells better than garlic simmering in olive oil. I don't like to say fry, but you see how it's still, see the bubbling? You want to lower it down till it stops and does not do any more than that. Even if you have to put it all the way down to low or remove the pan from the heat just for a while, especially if you have a gas stove. But that looks about right. So that's, if you try tasting it, it's soft. So we're going to get the breadcrumbs and just throw it right in there on top of the garlic. Okay, now you're going to turn the temperature up, and you're going to actually watch to see it start to smoke. Got to make sure you have a good wooden spoon, good wooden spoon, that's what I was going to say. And you're going to try to mix this, and as you mix it, you're going to see that little bit of olive oil is going to spread throughout. I'm turning it up now, because I want to be prepared. Turning it up, and we're going to watch very carefully. And you're going to actually watch as you do this. You're going to see underneath it's browning. You're going to try to get those over and move the ones that are not cooked under. You just got to continue. And there's always technique here that makes a difference. It's constant movement with the wooden spoon, watching where it's browning, and then moving it over and underneath so that what's not browned. Now, as you see, you're going to notice that the olive oil is permeating throughout, and if it's not enough, just have one of these shakers. You're going to put a little more olive oil. Don't go crazy with the olive oil, but you want to make sure that every piece of breadcrumb is touched with the olive oil. And we're going to keep doing this at high, and then we're going to turn it down. Once we see the bread is starting to toast, we can turn it down until eventually we turn it off, and then you're going to want to get it out of the pan as quickly as possible and right into the meat mixture. Okay, I'll keep doing that. Just want to show you this real quick. So you see how that's brown? That's what you're looking for. You don't want to get it any browner than that. And once you see that brown happening, you really got to move it, because otherwise you're going to burn some that's underneath there. So as you get it to the right temperature, it's right about middle temperature now, after it got hot enough to start toasting. And I'm just watching for those brown at the bottom and moving it. And you need both hands. So get back to you. So I don't know if you can tell from the video, but you can see it. If you compare this to what they look like when they came out of the can, the breadcrumbs, you see they're much browner. And I've got the heat off now, but the pan is still hot. So you got to make sure you turn off the heat and just mix it around. I gave it a few more shots of olive oil. Another thing, if you're using flavored breadcrumbs, that's different than Italian style breadcrumbs. Italian style breadcrumbs has, well, you know, the Italian seasoning in it. So if you use the Progresso Italian style and not flavored, which just has cheese in it and parsley, then you'd be fine. But you could always use the flavored and just put in a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And then of course you have the garlic flavor in here, and you added the cheese in here. And then you don't want to add the cheese in here, because you really don't want to cook cheese this way. It doesn't work well. Even though there is some cheese in this, it's a minimal amount. But I like fresh grated Parmesan cheese to go in the meat mixture. Okay, so this is as cooked as it's going to get. It's nice and golden brown, smells delicious. And I'm going to just go ahead and pour it right in there. Now be careful. When you put it in there, you first want to get your wooden spoon and mix it, because this is very hot, and you want to get a little mix with the spoon before you go in there with both of your hands to really mix it together. Okay, in case you're wondering what that music is in the background, that's my Bible-inspired music playlist. Here's the meat. That's on Amazon. If you want it, text me or message me in the comments, and I'll get you the link to that. But of course you have to be Amazon Prime member. Sorry to sell Amazon. Okay, so people always wondered why my mother's meatballs were not really balls. They were kind of like tiny little meatloaves. So it's kind of, I would say you want them to be about 2.5 inches in length and 1.5 inches around, but almost like this, because we're going to cook them in the pan thoroughly, and we want to make sure we cook all sides so it's easy to turn them, and they'll cook better throughout doing it this way. So you want to do, you know, if you want to make bigger ones, that's why my mother, when we loved them so much, that she kept making them bigger and bigger, so she wouldn't have to do this all day. But this is this is about the perfect size, and you probably can scoop out, you know, do this, see how much that fizzes in a measuring cup, and then do it. But again, you want to do it this way because we're going to line them up in the pan. I'll show you how when we cook them. Do one more. Just grab it. After a while, you get a hand feel of how much meat you should grab. And I'm just putting this on a cutting board. You could actually put these right into a baking pan and cook them in the oven, but I like them cooked in the pan with olive oil because I just think they're tastier. And you want to make sure they're cooked completely through. You will be able to actually eat these before you put them in the sauce. That's how thoroughly you're going to cook them. Okay, so let's put my hand there so you can see. Try to make them as even sized as you can, so when you cook them, they're going to be evenly cooked throughout. What do we get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 meatballs out of there. Yeah, usually I get about 20, 22 for the 3 pounds. So these are going to go into this pan with a little olive oil, and we're basically going to line them up and fill it until you get it. And then we're going to kind of rotate and turn them, rotate and turn them, rotate and turn them till you feel they're cooked throughout. It doesn't have to be, because believe me, they're going to cook in the sauce for hours, so they'll be cooked. But you want to make them, not well done, unless you really do plan to eat them right out of the pan, which you certainly can. Then you may want to cook them a little more. But cook them until they're all browned on all sides. And, it's going to probably be for each batch, maybe 8 minutes, something like that. But you just have to watch it and monitor it. Add oil if you need. So I was only able to get 12. 3, I could probably squeeze them in here. You know what? I am going to try squeezing them in here. And then you're going to use tongs to just turn them. Try to turn them a quarter. And then you can even try standing them all up on both sides to cook the ends. Let's see if I can get that in the video too. Okay. Helicopter going over. Hope that doesn't distract us. But you see how beautifully golden brown those are? I hope you can tell. Let me get the light turned back on. Okay, so you can see there's this beautiful golden brown color, and what we're going to do is, I turn them over all completely, but we're going to then turn them sideways. You kind of stand them on the edges like this and put them in together, and they'll cook, and then you can do that on the other side, and we may even decide to stand them up on their edges to cook there. Just going to judge how you're cooking them to make sure that they're cooked thoroughly on the outside. And if you want to cook them on the inside, you're going to turn down the heat, and you're just going to cook them for a little bit more, especially if you want to eat them. There's pork in there, so you want to eat them this way, which they're delicious, before you put them in the sauce. But remember, if you're going to put them in the sauce, they're going to be cooking for a couple hours anyway, and they'll definitely be cooked thoroughly and throughout. Okay, I just want to show you now they're all sideways. And by the time you finish turning them sideways, you're going to start right back in the beginning and turn them on the other side. These are cooking pretty thoroughly. I don't think I'm going to have to stand them up. But again, you don't want them to burn, so you're going to keep turning them like that. And then if you feel you have to on some of them, stand it up like that to cook it. Again, it's perfectly okay if they're not cooked inside, because you're going to cook them in the sauce. But I do encourage you to leave a couple in the pan, cook them completely through, and eat them just like this, just to try it. Okay, once again, because I'm recording, I think they came out as perfect as I've ever made them. You can see they're all perfectly golden brown, no burnt spots. You usually end up with some burnt. I got the heat off, so you're just going to leave it there. You could put these in a pan and just cover them for while the sauce is cooking. If you did it the way I would normally do it, I'd be cooking the sauce and making the meatballs kind of side by side. But it was easier to just get this video out of the way, because we already have the video for making the tomato sauce. So when I get to the part where you will be throwing the meatballs in the tomato sauce, in that process of cooking the tomato sauce, I'll record again. Okay, so if you followed the Nani sauce recipe, I just put in the sugar. It melted down into the tomato sauce. And I'm stirring in those bay leaves. You really need just 2 big bay leaves, but I only have half a bay leaves left in this bag. All right, so you've made sure that all the 3 different kinds of sauces are blended. The sausages are in there too. Again, follow that Nani sauce recipe. And then you're going to put the meatballs in. Now, you may not want to do it this way because they might splatter. And this is why you need a big pot. So even if you're just making 3 cans of sauce. So these were about 3/4 cooked. And the reason I like to do it in the way I appreciated the way my mother did it, because all my aunts cooked the meatballs in the sauce. So in other words, they went raw, put the raw meat into the sauce, and 5.5 hours later, or whenever, however long they simmered their sauce, the meatballs were cooked along with everything else. Same thing with the sausage and some other meat they would put in there. We always cook the meat first. Again, it's just like anything else my mother made. It was mainly because that's how my dad liked it. He liked to eat some of the meatballs before they got into the sauce sometimes. But cooking the meat first, it gives the integrity of the meatball flavor. It's not giving off all of its flavor to the sauce. It's retaining a lot of the flavor just in the meatball, but it gets the nice saucy mixture as well. So yeah, my mom used to have to stand by here. First of all, you have to keep stirring it, so she was nearby it anyway, and it's harder to stir when you have the meat in there. But we would always want to go and sneak a meatball before dinner time, and that was hands off. So anyway, that's how you cook it. When you serve I would take the meatballs out, put them on a separate dish. You could have the meatballs and the sausage together, or keep the meatballs separate and put the sausage and the sauce separate in a bowl for people to pour over their pasta. And that's how we made meatballs in the Macaluso house.